with that, I think it's time to jump into the speaker for today. And as my former professor, Leon Hale at Sam Houston used to say, it used to drive him crazy when people would say, that it was a person who needed no introduction. And he would always say that you don't need any introduction, why even bother? So with that, I'm just going to say, here's Father Time, born on the island, Dr. Bill Haglund.
Thank you, sir. I've done this program before. It's called Ask the Vet, and I am one. I'm a veterinarian, and so sometimes these guys come up with some really weird questions for me. I'm going to start off with something that some of y'all probably haven't heard, and that's kind of a little classification talk, and how I got into Rotary, which is a little bit of an interesting story. As Bill said, I was born on the island. I was born in Galveston, and I grew up there, and I started working as a kennel boy when I was 12. The reason I started working as a kennel boy when I was 12 was my father died when I was 12. And I had to find a job. And I'd gone to Rotary with him. He was a Rotarian in Galveston. And I started going to Father Sunday with him when I was quite young, because they did that once a year, several times a year, I guess, maybe. And I needed to find a job, and nobody wants to hire a 12-year-old. But a veterinarian in the club who knew Dad hired me as a kennel boy. And I started working for him when I was in the 8th grade at the age of 12. By the time I was a junior in high school, I decided that might be a pretty good thing to do. So I graduated from high school, started at A&M, went to vet school, graduated from vet school, and went to work for him when I graduated from vet school, and worked for him for 3.5 years. And then I moved to Houston, and along with my partner, opened Echo Lane Animal Clinic in 1975. So as of February 5th of this year, I would have had the same clinic, been in the same location for 46 years. I tell people I was 3 years old when I opened the clinic, and some of them believe me, but I don't think that's exactly true. I owned the clinic until 3 years ago, at which time I sold it to Dr. Michelle Fry, and she didn't fire me, so it was a good thing. And then about 2 months ago, she sold it to someone else. So I started out as an employee. I've been an employee for 2 years, and now I'm another employee. So I'm an employee for the third time, and I will tell you that being an employee is a lot different than being an owner. And I'm still learning how to be an employee. But anyway, been a lot of changes in the last 49 years since I graduated from vet school. So some things are different. A lot of things are the same. Handling people, talking to people, a lot of times are exactly the same way. Andy, where are you? Andy, you're still here. I'm very proud of your daughter-in-law. His daughter-in-law just bought a practice from a friend of mine who I've known since the first week I was in practice. He stepped in to say welcome to Houston. Dr. Paul Smith at Springwoods Veterinary Clinic. He bought his practice on January 4th and is opening probably the end of this month or the first part of February, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, first part of February. And she's looking up to you as her mentor.
Well, she came by and spent a couple of weeks with me when she was a senior in vet school, and we had a good time when she was there. And the main thing she kept telling me was, "You're old school," but I kind of like it. So maybe that's a good thing. But she certainly did a great job, and she's going to do a wonderful job at the new practice. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. Anything you'd like to ask. I do not want to criticize anything that any other veterinarians told you. So if you want to ask general questions, that's great. Specific questions, as long as I don't have to go into a case too deeply, I'd be happy to answer. Mark, I see your hand. You're up, Mark.
Hey, there's a story on the news that you may have heard about, that a bird has flown to Australia from some other country, let's say China or somewhere. Somebody captured it, and now it's a big brouhaha to kill the bird. It's like some little carrier pigeon type thing, because the bird constitutes a biohazard. Does the United States ever have to do anything like that? Could you talk a bit about and maybe some of the stranger animals you've seen along the way?
You know, I haven't really tried to see strange animals, so that's a good thing. I treat dogs and cats
Except for this club.
well, and I've tried not to treat any of the strange animals in our club either, because we've got a lot of them, and over the years we've had a lot of strange animals in our club, to be honest. The only bird I've actually seen and done much with is we've got a cockatiel in the clinic, and he flew up to one of my employees in 2005 outside of Kroger in the shopping center, and fortunately he had birds, and so he flew to him. He brought him to the clinic. We put him in a cat carrier with a twig in it overnight, and the next morning it was, can we get a carrier for the bird? So the bird's been there ever since, and has remained in the clinic through 3 owners now, 15 years. I don't think the little sucker's going to ever die. He's meaner than crud. He'll only come to me, and that only about 10% of the time will he come to me. So I don't treat birds. He had a problem with his wing one time, and I sent him to a friend of mine to look at, who treats birds and exotics and those kind of things. He also treats snakes, thankfully. We had a guy that came in one day with a bag, a paper bag, and I said, what you got in the bag? And he said, a snake. I said, don't open the bag. I'll tell you who to go to. So I treat dogs and cats. This could be a really short, good program. Don't want to get too early. Oh,
How about
God.
Sheila?
Oh, good, Sheila. Hi, Sheila.
Can you help a person find the right kind of pet? If somebody wants, they're older and they're alone, what do you recommend as a kind of breed, or are there breeds that are friendlier towards seniors than other breeds?
Well, for you, Sheila, I would recommend a boa constrictor. But beyond that, I'm kind of a mixed breed fan. I think that I think rescue groups are wonderful. My daughter has 3 dogs, and if I had time and the way to do it, I could show you a picture of all 4 of them. If you ever follow her on Facebook, and she puts her pictures up all the time. She's got, I think, most of them from a group called Canine Angels. I just think mixed breed dogs are great, and for the most part, you can pick them out yourself. All of her dogs are 10 pounds and smaller, so for an older person, I think a small, older, either not too long-haired or friendly little puppy dog is just great. So that's kind of my opinion. I think mixed breed dogs are nice. And I think if you don't want to get a very big one, I think it's also better if you're older. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
Thanks.
But I go for boa constrictor.
Right.
Hey, Mark.
Just a comment. My wife years ago was a big fan of the TV show Downton Abbey. And so she introduced me last Sunday to a new masterpiece PBS show, also set in the UK, out in the countryside. It's all nice. It's called All Creatures Great and Small. And Bill, I think you might get a kick out of it because it's the story of a vet in about 1930 rural England, at the point where a lot of the farm equipment went from being horses and oxen to tractors and cars, but they still need it. So it's a story. I thought you might like it. I think the rest of you might like it as well. It's only been out for about a week or so, but it's a nice, pleasant diversion. It's called All Creatures Great and Small.
That guy's name is James Herriot, and he wrote, I think, 4 books. The first one was All Creatures Great and Small. The second one was All Things Bright and Beautiful. I can't remember the other 2. I've read the first 2. The weird thing about it is those stories are absolutely true. I mean, if you could write a book about all the weird things that happen in a veterinary practice. When I read those books, and it's probably been 25 or 30 years since I read those two books, but you can read them and say, yep, absolutely. Those, yep. People are like that. And they do those things, and you can believe that they happen. I mean, it's just incredible. Even watching some of the other shows that are on about stuff that happens, some of the animal practices, that stuff just happens. It's crazy. There's different people out there with all kinds of different problems.
I was going to ask you, Bill, so what is one memory that you can think of a situation that somebody brought to you to fix that you were just kind of like flabbergasted about?
I haven't really thought about some of those. I guess a lot of them are more neglect cases than anything. And I hate to think about the neglect ones. I remember I was just thinking one in Galveston. I had about a 11-month-old German Shepherd that came in that they put a collar on this dog when he was 3 months old. I mean, it just ate through his neck. And just think about that. And stuff like that. It's just, there's so many things that, and one of my unfortunately favorite things that I say at the clinic is you can't cure stupid. And it's unfortunate how many things that people do they just don't think about. A lot of things that I see that I don't like are things that just are neglect that come to mind. I don't like to even talk about them.
Well, that's why you do what you do, is to help prevent those, right?
Yeah, you have to help them. You got to help them.
Bill talked me out of getting a Basenji.
They don't bark.
Kathy keeps putting up her hand.
They don't bark.
They don't bark. I heard they yodel. I don't know that I would want a dog that yodels when somebody comes to the door.
It's kind of an interesting sound that they make, but they're happy, friendly little dogs. They're a little bit hyper, but they're not bad pets.
Are they good with other dogs? I've got an 11-year-old collie.
Well, it depends on the individual. The one helpful hint that I've always seemed to use that helps is, if you're introducing a new dog to your house, don't let them meet at their common place. In other words, have them meet at a neutral environment. In other words, take your dog to a park or somewhere that your dog doesn't identify as home. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You'll want your dog to be protective of the environment where it meets a new dog. Okay?
That makes sense.
Because that's the main problem you have when you introduce a new dog to the household, is they just get protective. They don't like the new dog. But if they meet at a neutral environment and they get to play a little bit and get to know each other, and then you take them home, then it's not that difficult to have them assimilate together.
How are they with shedding?
Not too bad. They've got a short hair coat.
Any hereditary health issues that they go through?
Not too many. I don't see many Basenjis anymore. So
Interesting.
who's got one, but I haven't seen one in a while. But yeah, they do kind of have a weird noise that they make that's not a bark. Kind of type, yeah.
That's the kind of noise I make when my wife is kicking my rear for not doing my chores.
Hey, I just saw Keely cover her face. I think she's gonna think you were gonna say something else.
I didn't know where that was about to go. I was like, oh God, no.
I have a question, Bill. I have a 16-year-old mini schnauzer that thinks he's a puppy, and he keeps, he jumps all the time, and we try to keep him from jumping because his back goes out. What's the best geriatric, not for people, medicine or vitamins or whatever supplement you can give a dog, for their aches and pains?
You can give them glucosamine that you can buy in the store. It depends. It just depends on whether it helps or not. You can buy. I take Move Free, which is glucosamine, chondroitin, and MSM. For a schnauzer, you'd probably give a half of one a day. What it's supposed to do is help the cartilage regenerate. That's the plan. if they get to a point where they actually do have some arthritis, there are medications like carprofen, Rimadyl, those kind of things that will help along with that, or sometimes better than that, that you can get from your veterinarian. It just depends on the level of pain they have.
We actually give him that when he does really stupid things and jumps too high. So we give him that, but not all the time, because it makes him sleep.
But it may just be making him comfortable, you know. That may help. But yeah, but that's because you can glucosamine all the time. It won't hurt anything. It's just like a lot of supplements. What they don't use, they'll urinate out.
So you can give him people vitamins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, they make it for dogs too. It's called Dazaquin, Cozaquin. You'll see ads for those things, but you know, it's the same product. A lot less expensive.
Hey, doctor.
Paul.
So they say that the claws of a cat is actually attached to the bone. Is that true? And it's really like mutilating or just cutting their bones when people declaw cats?
Basically, pretty much, yes. Now, the two things about the claw: the sharpness of the claw, the way the claw grows out is, the reason they scratch is to scratch off the outer claw and expose the sharper inner claw. That's why they scratch. So get that outer claw out and expose the inner claw. When you declaw a cat, you remove about that much of the toe, essentially. Okay. So you are removing part of the toe of the claw. You try to get right behind the nail. The nail won't grow back. You have to keep the nail from growing back. Usually it's done when they're 3 months old or so, when they're small. I've done them to adult cats because they're tearing up the leather couch, and people can't live with it. There are some veterinarians that won't do it, as Mary picks up her kitty. But my former boss, Dr. Fry, will not declaw cats. I had a kitten once that I declawed the day after she climbed some sheer drapes in a house that we were renting from my mother-in-law's best friend. So that was a tragic situation, and I didn't have much of a choice. But really, I will do it because I feel like it's better for the animal and for the household. Soft paws, which you can put on them, you know, to cover the claws so they can't do that, will work. But they come off, and then you have to keep putting them back on and back on and back on, and that's difficult. So, you know, there's some states that outlaw it, and I'm not against that either. But I think that if you have to do it, you have to do it. We probably do now 2 a year. So if the family really feels like it has to be done, I'll do it. And they do okay. The cat that I did many years ago would still kind of knead her feet against the furniture. And I think it just felt good to knead her feet, just to kind of knead her paws. But she never seemed to be affected by it. But I did it when she was 3 months old. So at that point in time, they're really small, and I don't think that affects them at all. But I wouldn't do it just to be doing it. I would be doing it if they have to have it done.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no alternative, I would say I'd do it.
Yeah.
Kind of a secondary question.
It's a controversial thing, no question.
What a follow-up question? Well, not a separate question. I heard that chocolate affects dogs and cats. Are there any type of foods that we should be aware of that could be very harmful to them aside from chocolate?
People foods, grapes, raisins, those are probably the worst. Chocolate has a product in it called theobromine. Dark chocolate is worse than milk chocolate. Either way, you want to be careful. But if they eat dark chocolate, you need to make sure they evacuate fairly quickly. milk chocolate, and both of them depend on how much and the size of the dog. But dark chocolate, a small amount can be a problem with almost any size dog. But milk chocolate, they can tolerate more milk chocolate depending on size.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a friend who has a very old little miniature pinscher, and he's got the worst breath. Any suggestions? I mean, his teeth are halfway falling out. He's really old. His whole face is gray and white. He's the cutest little dog, but his breath, you can smell it a mile away. And my friend has bought all kinds of little chewables, you know, that are supposed to help, but I think he just needs to pull his teeth out.
Well, that is possible. Some of those dogs have such bad teeth that they're better off without the ones that are bad, at least. And it's amazing. You know, we've had some over the years that, you know, I can talk to them for years about how bad their teeth are and how bad they need to be cleaned and that type of thing. They'll finally give in, and you know, we'll clean them and pull some. And a month later, they'll come back and say, "I am so glad I finally had that done." You know, because the dog feels better, the breath is better, and they're happier dog. And you know, there are some conditions in the mouth where you actually do have to pull all the teeth, and they do.
Just that to him.
We had a Chihuahua one time named Dude. He belonged to the people that built the two office buildings. Their name was Emmeline, across from us. And Dude actually lost all of his teeth. We didn't pull them all. He lost them all. And he had to be on a kidney diet that was a dry food. And to watch him eat was a real experience, because he would gulp the food. He loved the food, and it was dry. He ate it dry, and he just gulped the food and loved it. And you know, that people think they won't eat with the dry food if they don't have teeth. Not Dude, boy, he loved it. And he did well for years, eating with no teeth. So they adapt. And dogs, you know, actually dogs don't, if you watch them, they don't really chew their food. They more likely gulp it. You know, they'll chew some with their back teeth, but their front teeth are just for grabbing the stuff. The canine teeth and the incisors. And another thing about the incisors, if you notice, some dogs will lose their front teeth fairly easily. And the reason they do that is because they don't have any roots at all, hardly. So if you play with a rope toy or something like that with your dog, play tug of war with your dog, those teeth will fall out pretty readily. And they just do because they have no roots. Same thing with cats. Cats have incisors in front, have very little root, and they come out pretty easily, and it's just normal. And one thing I learned when I saw my cat do it, if you have cats, is if you ever have a cat with a broken canine tooth, the long tooth, I can tell you how they do it. They'll jump down off of somewhere and pop it on the floor. Saw my cat do it. He jumped down off of a counter that was fairly high. I heard a pop. I looked down, and there was part of the tooth on the floor. And I've seen more cats that have come into the office with a half a canine tooth, and they do okay with a half a canine tooth. But I'll tell the people that has a broken canine tooth, and they'll say, "Well, how did that happen?" I said, "I can tell you." And that's how it happened. And that's how they do it. They just miss. You know, they'll land on their feet, but they'll hit their head on the floor. And that's what happens. So
So when you talk about keeping dogs' teeth clean, I know there's vets that say rawhide is really great, and other vets that say they're not big fans of rawhide. Where do you fall on that?
Well, rawhide is okay if they don't eat it. You know, what the dentist, I've got a list at the office that a dentist made. If you can dent it with your finger, it's okay. If you can't dent it with your finger, it's not okay. Okay, so
where do you find those types of dental products for dogs?
Petco, those kind of things.
I mean, do you have a brand that you recommend?
Well, greenies are good.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good product. You don't want to let them, you don't want that, once again, you don't want to let them gulp them down. You know, you want to let them chew on them because it's the chewing that helps. There's another product called Chewies that you can buy. Just, you know,
What about dentist sticks? Do
rawhide,
those,
rawhide is not digestible.
what about dentist sticks? Is that,
Dentist sticks are okay.
okay,
Once again, you just don't want them to chew them up and eat them whole. Because if it's rawhide, specifically rawhide, they have to eat it. They have to pass it like they ate it. That makes sense?
mm-hmm.
Because it's not going to be digested. If they have something that's digestible, it's okay, they can pass it. But if it's not digestible, they got to pass it like they ate it. So check and make sure it's digestible if you're going to give it to them. And bones are definitely not good. Hard bones are not good because they'll chip their teeth on them. And chicken bones are the worst ever. And I tell people they feed their dogs chicken bones, but the thing is, I've never seen a chicken bone splinter smooth. If you break a chicken bone, it's like feeding them little knives. And that's not a good thing. And you know, and for those of you who like to leave socks around, my second partner's son used to bring a Labrador in that every time the dog boarded, she'd pass 2 or 3 socks. And you know, you wonder how that dog ever didn't plug up eating socks, but she did. But she'd pass a couple of socks every time she boarded with us. Stranger but true. President Bill, it's
Do we
one
have any other questions
once again,
for?
we've run out of time. I love this when y'all ask too many questions. I love it. Thank you very much.
Well, no, I have one other question. If you,
I'm sorry, I think we're out of time, Bill.
okay, well.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You have executive privilege.
Well, no, I was just going to ask, we were given a corgi, a 3.5-year-old corgi several months ago, and they were feeding Hazel is her name, Hazel Blue Buffalo, and which apparently is, you know, pretty high-end, expensive dog food. And apparently it's all meat, I think. And is all protein good for a dog, or are there better dog foods that you could recommend?
I'm sure they have some other stuff in there that's not all meat. Blue Buffalo, you know, you get into allergy type of things. Now, one thing I will tell you that grain-free foods have been shown to not be a good idea. Anybody feeding a grain-free food, and it comes into some stuff related to the heart, which it's too long an explanation. But I would say do not feed your dog a grain-free food. But some of the things that Blue Buffalo does have some foods that are hypoallergenic, and that's a good thing depending on the meat source. They've got some salmon and potato food and stuff like that that's good. Usually they have a carbohydrate. The thing you look for in foods are the carbohydrate source and the protein source. And the problems that dogs have had over time are allergies to mostly chicken and rice. And if they're having skin allergies, usually it's to the components of the food that are related to the protein source and or the carbohydrate source. So they've gotten into foods that are not common, like salmon or duck and potato or sweet peas. Like with cats, instead of rice, it's sweet peas. And in cats, they've gotten into rabbit and duck and stuff like that. When they're having food allergies and things like that, that they're not common sources in most of the foods. I'm drawing a blank, but for a long time, they went to lamb and dogs. That was the first thing they went to in dogs that was away from the normal stuff. And then dogs started getting their allergies to lamb. So they've gotten away from lamb. They've gotten into duck and venison. And actually they have a food with kangaroo now that Hills has come out with. That's not an uncommon carbohydrate, uncommon protein source.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Bill, thank you. It's fascinating as always.
Thank you.
And
thank you to those who hung out.
Well, you're a gentleman and a scholar. I don't care what anybody else said. So